Happy Halloween, folks. It's Chris Crazy House here, and we're here to do a black horror discussion. Adjust my chair here. I'm actually rushing a little bit because I'm uploading the last two parts to my Amut's Angel short animated film that came out back in 2011. So that should be fully uploaded here on this YouTube channel. So if you are so inclined, please go check it out. I'm sure you will like it. But just to let you know, it's for adults only. It's not for kids. So I put the age restriction on all three parts, especially part two, because there's some nudity in there. So I don't want any parents complaining. I'm letting you know. And I make full warnings in the thumbnail, in the description, and everything else that is not for kids. So, but you can go watch it right now. They both should be up at this point. I see. It's funny because the one has 5 views already, and I'll be honest with you. When I took this film around for film festivals back in 2011, 2012, that second part is the one that did the best. People like that part the most, apparently, with the nudity and the decadence. What's up to everybody? Peace to you, cats. I appreciate you being here, sister. Thank you. But people seem to like that part a lot. Well, what's funny is after I made this film, I had a lot of like conspiracy theorists show up and like they would send me messages or they would tell me in person, like, oh, you exposed this and you did that and all. And I'm like, no, I didn't expose anything. All I did was just read the same conspiracy websites that you read, and I put that into my animation. Don't think that I have some sort of insider track on what goes on with these Hollywood elites. I just, like I said, I read and watch just like you guys, and I just decided to put that in my own way. So when you see part 2 of Amut's Angel, just know it's kind of like the Bohemian Grove or whatever, and it's that type of decadence. And I wanted to show someone busting that up and, tearing up that type of party. So that's why I put that in the animation. But thank you all for joining me. I appreciate the ones that are here right now, and I'm sure I see more people pouring in. So thank you. I'm glad you guys showed up for this black horror discussion. And I'll let you know just a few things before we get started that I will be doing a contest at the end of this live stream. So if you are here, I will give the question at the end of this live stream, and you have to answer it in the comment section, just like I did last time. And what you will win is an autographed copy of Big Monty and the Cyborg Substitute. Hopefully you can see it. There's kind of glare there because it's real dark in this room right now because outside, like, it's the perfect Halloween day today. It's literally storming. There's wind. It's dark outside. So it's the lighting in here is a little off. I have some of my, like, a small spotlight, but not too much. Just letting you know, it's literally like a spooky, stormy night, but it's daytime here. So we got real bad weather here right now. Hopefully the live stream doesn't cut off, but I think it doesn't seem like it's that type of storm. Like I realize, I know storms that knock out power or knock out internet. This doesn't seem like it's that bad, but there is a lot of wind and stuff outside, so just be mindful of that. But yes, you will win an autographed copy of Big Monty and the Cyborg Substitute. I will draw a picture in there, an original sketch in there for you, and I will send it to you if you win the contest at the end of this. So, like I said, I want to talk about black horror, and what inspired this topic was this really good documentary called Horror Noir, which is a documentary just talking about blacks in horror films or black people's take on horror films, and some of the, they even make fun of some of the tropes that go on with black people in horror, like the whole idea of a black person getting killed first or getting murdered. They kind of they seriously delve into some of these things in this documentary. Now, I want to get the cons of the documentary out of the way first. The thing I didn't like about this documentary is basically I thought it should have been longer. they covered a lot in a short amount of time, and I understand why they did that. That they made it for the Shutter network, so it was coming on their network, and I guess they wanted to truncate it. But this easily could have been a 4 or 5 part series that should have been shown like throughout the week. I think this subject would have benefited more from that if they had done that. Because I saw where they were making the cuts. Because I do editing, so I know what I could tell where they were cutting stuff out. And what I mean by that is like they interviewed a lot of psychiatrists and black doctors who study the phenomena that go on in society, but also what goes on in horror films. And they interviewed film historians. They interviewed black directors, black actors who have starred in horror movies, whether it be like all together black horror films or just horror films that have black people in them. So, but they would just kind of like put them on screen. They wouldn't really introduce them or let you know what films they had been in. I know who they are, and I know what films they've been in because I'm a horror fan and I'm a fan of black cinema altogether. So I knew the shorthand already. Like this film was like made for someone like me who already knows what's going on. But if you're just a person who thought that this might be an interesting documentary or whatever and decide to look at it, you would not know who some of these people were, and they didn't give you a proper introduction. That's just my opinion. I thought it could be like if they just taken their time and they went through different eras of horror cinema and where black people were during all that time. Like they start all the way back from the beginning of the last century with like movies like Birth of a Nation, going through like the all the way up to like the zombie horror and like the classic horror movies from like the Universal films, the zombie horror like Night of the Living Dead that George Romero made, where he had a black hero in the movie back in the 60s. They go through like the 70s with the black exploitation. They had a lot of like horror black exploitation, like Blackula and stuff like that. They go through the 80s with like the slasher horror, and they bring it all the way up to Jordan Peele's film Get Out. Like that's like the last film they kind of really talk about, and he actually interviewed him on there. And I thought this was ironic because I just saw his last movie, Us. Like me and my wife watched it maybe like 2 weeks ago, and I actually really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was very good and very well done. I've been pleasantly surprised by Jordan Peele's movies. Like when I first found out that he was directing and making the movie Get Out, I was like, really, the dude from the comedy show is going to direct a horror movie and it's going to be about black folks? But he has surprised me. And what I like about his films is that they work as straightforward horror suspense, but they also have a subtext to both those films. So like you could watch it just as a straight horror movie and it still be a cool movie. But if you look at it for the hidden meanings that are in there, that works as well. So that they work on several different levels, and I appreciate that type of filmmaking. So I'm a fan of Get Out and Us. I thought those were both very well done movies. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does next because I know he has, if I understand, he has 2 other movies that are based in this horror universe that he's kind of creating. So I want to see what he comes up with next. So we shall see. Hopefully he can keep the train rolling or whatever. But like I said, this documentary I thought was very well done, but it could have been a lot longer and a lot better in my opinion. So like the thing that I liked the most was that the fact that they had so many different black actors from films that I've seen. Like they had Rachel True, who was in, what was that movie, The Craft, where she was one of the witches, one of the 4 female witches, and then she talked about how, which a lot of these people talk about, is like they're based on the way a lot of white Hollywood studios write or create these horror movies. They normally don't have black people in mind to play those characters, but if a black person or a black actor comes in and auditions and gets the role, they sort of rework it to fit them. And Rachel True talked about like her character wasn't originally supposed to be black, but when she got cast as that character, they started making her backstory based on her, because the 4 different witches in that movie, they all had different problem going on. Like Neve Campbell's character had scars on her back. The that one ugly girl that looks like a pig, who's also like a pig to me. Her family was poor, and Rachel True's character was bullied at school by these racist white girls. So they put that in. That wasn't her original thing until they cast her in the movie. Same thing with what is that movie? Even the original Night of the Living Dead. Like George Romero didn't write the movie thinking that he was going to cast a black actor in that main role, but of Ben, the character Ben. But like once he got there, it kind of changed the role and had more significance, especially when you watch the ending of that. And I don't know how many of you guys have seen the original Night of the Living Dead, the one that's in black and white. Very well done film. It's one of those films that's considered like required viewing if you are a horror aficionado. If you like horror movies, you kind of need to see that. And I would agree. I think if you're even a film student, that's a good film to see because they made that movie on a 0 cent budget, and they got it out there and got it done. And because of some legal reasons and the way films were released back then, they never really made money off of it the way they were supposed to. But that's a whole nother story in and of itself. But just the fact that they put a black man as the lead in a movie that came out in the late 60s at the same time that, like they said, like while they were taking their film to be distributed, they heard that Dr. King had been shot. So like it was like right around that time where we're having all these race riots and assassinations and whatnot. And that was always he was an interesting role. The fact that he was the main character. Now, what was interesting and sad about it is that his character does get killed at the very end, and he gets killed because they think he's a zombie, but really it's just because he's a, the symbolism is, they killed this black man anyway, and then he winds up getting burned alive, or not burned alive, but he's already dead. They throw him on the pyre with the rest of the zombies, just because they just assume this black man must be a zombie in this house. There's a remake of that movie that was made where Tony Todd plays the character of Ben, and he actually is a zombie by the end of the movie, but you have to actually go see that. That came out in like the 80s, and that was actually that was the first time I even knew about Night of the Living Dead. I saw the remake first before I saw the original. So, which is actually a good movie, very well done. It was directed by Tom Savini, the makeup effects guy. So you go check that one out too. I still like the original more, but because it has more significance. But I like both for different reasons. One of the things they talked about in the documentary was the fact that they went through the whole myth of the black person getting killed first, and what they kind of came to the conclusion that that's not always true. And I realized this by watching horror movies, that black people don't always get killed first in horror movies, but what always does happen is they'll have the black person like either sacrifice their life for the other characters in the movie, or they'll have the black character fight the monster. And it's like a psychological thing where white people want to prove how evil and how bad the monster is that's in the movie, or how much danger they're in, is by saying, okay, if this monster can kill the black guy, the big, strong, scary black guy that normally scares us, if that monster can kill the black guy, then this monster is really bad. And they went through a list of these different movies where that happened. It was like, yeah, that's pretty much what they're saying, is like, okay, this monster is so evil. It happens in a lot of sci-fi movies as well. Like if you go see like one of my favorites was Alien 3 with Charles S. Dutton, where he actually tries to fight the xenomorph. Yaphet Kotto does the same thing in the first Alien. He actually tries to fight the xenomorph. And they always get killed, but they said psychologically that's what they're trying to imprint on your mind, is that's how evil this monster is, that he can beat up and defeat this big black guy. So you better be scared of this monster. And like I said, once I actually broke down and looked at some of the list of films they talked about, I was like, okay, yeah, I think that theory is actually dead on. I did want to talk about some of my favorite black horror characters in films. I couldn't really think of too many movies where it was just all black people, but I'll talk about the ones where, yeah, Dark Void. I'm not a fan of. There's certain aspects of the film of Alien 3 that I like, but I don't like the film overall. Like there's certain, and you can tell it's one of those films that's a mishmash, because there are so many different, like if you look into the history of it, there were so many different scripts that were written for that movie that just never panned out. And you can tell in the movie that it's a mix up and a mismatch, and the studio ruined that movie because it has one of the greatest film directors directing it, David Fincher, when he was first starting. And if they just let him do what he wanted to do, I think that would have been a way better film. But of course, they messed it up because at that time he wasn't the David Fincher we all know from Fight Club. He was just a new guy coming from doing music videos. So yeah, that's what happened with Alien 3. But I want to talk about some of my favorite black characters from films, from different horror films, because like I said, there's not too many out there where it's just completely an all black horror film, other than things like Tales from the Hood, which is one of my favorite movies to watch during this time of year. I usually try to watch it at least once a year, especially during Halloween. But the original Tales from the Hood, not the new one. I really like the original one from the 90s. I thought that was one of the best horror films they think they could have. And what I like about that is that it was a horror film, but that also had a lot of really good social messages in the movie. So for anyone who's seen it, my favorite character easily is the caretaker of the actual funeral home, which connects all the different anthology stories in that movie. Played by the legendary character actor, I think his name is Clarence Williams III. A lot of people remember him as Link from the Mod Squad, but his character is one of the funniest. Like me and my friends used to imitate that character all the time and making fun of go back and forth with his lines where he talks about the shit throughout the whole film. And he's like, ah, yes, the shit. He said, don't worry, you'll get the shit. And like I said, that character is one of the funniest. He actually gets pretty creepy by the end when he actually does turn into a demon. But I think that's one of my favorite horror movie characters as far as like black characters in the movie. Another one is from a film that surprisingly not a lot of young people have seen, but it's a classic horror film, and that's Dawn of the Dead. And that's the character of Peter, the black SWAT team guy that's in the movie. He's the only black character in the movie for the most part, but he's the main character in the movie. Now, what I like about it is he survives till the end. He doesn't do anything stupid in the movie. He's actually the voice of reason in the movie. I almost kind of felt bad for him. Like I remember seeing Dawn of the Dead when I was a teenager, maybe like 17, 18 years old. And his character was the character that I immediately identified with. But also, like, I felt bad for him because I was like, damn, he's stuck in this situation with these crazy white folks. The fact that he was like the only black guy there, and he decides, like they're gonna run off to survive in the mall, but there's something up that they're not, like those white people he was with, they just weren't wrapped too tight, in my opinion, and that's why most of them died and he survived by the end. But yeah, I liked Peter was one of my favorite horror movie characters, and he even kills a racist cop at the beginning of the movie. If anyone's ever seen it, the SWAT team was going to this housing project to catch some criminals, and they wind up, there's like some zombies down in the basement that get loose in the apartment, and they have to kill those. But there was a racist SWAT team guy at the beginning named Willy, who was just going berserk and killing whoever was in the apartment complex, zombies, regular tenants, whoever. He was just shooting wildly and killing people. So Peter winds up killing him and getting rid of him. So that's how they introduced the character of Peter. And like you see that he shoots the racist cop first, and then he takes all his mask, and you see, oh, it's a black guy. So that's like one of the things. Like I always like that character. He actually reminds me a lot of my older brother. Like they look they almost look very similar. Like my brother's like a few shades lighter, but those the same big ass eyes or whatever, and that voice, and of course the slang that Peter was using back then from the 70s. Of course, my brothers talk the same way because they're 70s kids. So that's one of the reasons that I was like so love that character so much. And like I said, he actually survives by the end. At first, he's going to kill himself. You think he's going to kill himself, but then he just decides to say, "The hell with! I'm going to survive." And Oddly enough, him and the white woman are the only two that survive in that movie. Let's see. Another one is the character of Kincaid, who was in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, which is mine and most people's favorite Nightmare on Elm Street sequel, The Dream Warriors. That's the one where they're in the insane asylum for young kids, and uh, they have the last surviving kids from Elm Street are in the insane asylum, and they all had the same dreams and know who Freddy is. But the character Kincaid was always one of my favorites because I saw that movie when I was a kid when it first came out, and he reacted to Freddy like a black person would, like like he wasn't really as scared of Freddy, nor was he. He wasn't someone that bowed down to authority, even at the hospital. And for those who remember, a young Lawrence Fishburne was in that movie as well. He played the orderly in that movie. So that character Kincaid, though, he always cracked me up. My dad loves that character as well. Uh, Another one is uh, a really an older. There's an older black exploitation film. It's called Sugar Hill, and a lot of people might not have seen it. It's hard to find too, but it's about a black woman who's I think it's her boyfriend gets killed by this mob, so she finds like a voodoo priestess or voodoo priest or something like that to help her raise up these zombies to get revenge on the Italian mobsters that killed her boyfriend. And her name in the movie is Sugar. I forget what the actress's real name is, but she's gorgeous. If you ever seen the movie, go ahead and check it out. It's called Sugar Hill. Like if you look up Sugar Hill zombie film from the 70s, you'll be able to find it because it's not. A lot of people will confuse it with the Wesley Snipes movie Sugar Hill that came out in the 90s. It's not that, but this film is a horror film that takes place in New Orleans, and is lumped into the black exploitation era, but it's really not a black exploitation film. But like I said, I love that movie. That's one of my favorite black horror films, and I think it would actually serve well if it was remade in a way where they updated the effects and whatnot. I don't know who they would get to play the main character of Sugar, but I think it was a very well done film. But like I said, it gets lumped into the whole, the the black exploitation era. I see someone said Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Is that their favorite film? Yes, that's one of my favorite horror films of all time. There's no black people in it, as there wouldn't be, because I think black people are smart enough to stay away from rural areas like that. And we have good reason why. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of my favorite films of all time. But like I said, there's no black people in it. The original, I like the one from the 70s. The remake wasn't that bad. The remake is actually very well done. I like the way that the remake is shot. What's his name? Nipsel, I think is the name of the director. But the way he shot that film is very. This is going to sound weird coming from considering it's a horror film, but it was very beautifully shot, and there's some very creepy scenes in that movie as well. Like the whole part where in the remake where Leatherface he actually takes the face off of one of the main characters, the boyfriend of Jessica Biel. He takes that guy's face off and wears it. That scene is actually pretty creepy. But there are certain things I don't like the direction they went with Leatherface by making him evil. Because in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he wasn't really evil. He was just he's mentally handicapped and he was misguided by like the people. His family was evil, and they kind of made him do that stuff. So I thought it was weird that they in the remake they just make him he's malevolent, like he's really evil in that movie. Does he wants to hurt people, but in the original is almost. If you watch the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he's almost the victim in that movie. And what I mean by that is these kids keep coming into his house. He wasn't out bothering anybody. They came into his house. So if you watch the original movie, like you'll see that Leatherface is actually he's actually the victim in the movie. He's not really so much the villain. And he's trying, and like there's even a part where he's trying to figure out what to do because these kids keep showing up at the house and he doesn't know he has to do something before his uncle / older brother gets home. So he wants to Uh, so he has to figure out he has to go kill some of the rest of these kids. But that's what I like about the original. It's just so weird and offbeat, and the character himself is not really. And even the guy that runs the gas station, I think, is one of the funniest like horror movie characters because his character is just ridiculous. Uh, Last but not least, like what's become like my favorite black horror character is Jada Pinkett in the movie Demon Knight, and I like that movie because it subverts a lot of expectations. Anyone's ever seen Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. I like that character. The character that Jada plays a lot. For one thing, you don't think that her character is going to survive. You think that she's just going to be a side character that gets killed in that movie. And at this point, she wasn't really that famous in Hollywood. She was still just kind of finding her way. So you don't know that she's going to be the hero of the movie until the end. And I like that a lot. And the fact that she actually becomes the Demon Knight by the end as well is actually pretty cool. I wanted to see a sequel with her as the badass from then on, who knew that she was the one that was out there to kill the demons, but they never they never had her in any sequels after that. So I thought that was a missed opportunity. But yeah, those are my favorite horror movie characters. Now I do really like I rewatched the movie Get Out like a few weeks ago, and I have to say I really enjoyed the character of Chris more the second time watching it. He actually was a pretty good character. Now, obviously, for obvious reasons, and anyone who follows me on my other channel knows that I would not even for this Chris would not even be in that situation. But I understood his character once he was in that situation. He did what he needed to do to get out of it. So he was actually a smart horror movie character. And Jordan Peele, he wrote the character that way on purpose. He said that he wanted to do something where you know how black people are always yelling at the screen about what people should do. He wanted to actually put that in a movie and not have the characters be stupid. But like I said, in my opinion, but that's just my social ideas. I wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place because I would be over some white girl's house by myself. That's just how I roll. So, but he's become one of my favorite characters watching it, and I really enjoyed the other characters in the character that Lupita played in Us. She played two characters in that movie. The character of Red and what's her name, Adeli, I think is the main character. Lupita was actually pretty creepy in that movie. I must say she did a good job of playing a scary character. She had a lot of emotion in her eyes, and it's a shame that someone as talented as her doesn't get the opportunity to play as many good characters as she should. But that's just the way Hollywood is. That's why I think we need to make our own films. And Jordan Peele has shown that when you make your own films, you can put who you want in there. Because had that been another director, no one would give Lupita the chance to star in a movie like that, or show that she has range. Like they put her in movies, as beautiful as she is, they rarely put her in the movie. Other than like Black Panther, and even that, she was only a side character. But way they put they use Lupita in these movies, they use her voice more than anything. Like she's played several characters where it's just her voice, but the character is animated, and you don't see what she looks like, which I think is a shame because, like I said, she's gorgeous. But yeah, those are my favorite, and the other two movies that I really like that are black horror centered are two movies that are you really can't. I don't I don't like to put them on a list because I think they're almost above that list, and that is Candyman and Blade. So those two movies are probably like the top tier as far as like my favorite horror movie type characters. The first Candyman, I don't really like the sequels that much, even though they do explain more of his origin, which I think is a good thing. So I think that origin is very important to his character. But yeah, you're right, Dark Void. Ken Foray was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. He gets killed by Leatherface, but he was in the movie. He's in a lot of movies where he gets killed by the bad guy. He was in that. If you remember, he was in the Halloween remake that Rob Zombie made. He gets killed in the bathroom stall by Michael Myers. But he's another actor I think is very talented that gets wasted on a lot of stuff. But back to Candyman, I think Candyman is a very well done. It's one of the creepiest movies I've ever seen. Like really, he doesn't Candyman doesn't even show up until like an hour into the film, but they do a good job with the suspense and building up his legend to the point where by the time he does show up, you're like, oh shit. You know what I mean? So I think he's and his voice, Tony Todd's voice, he has a great voice for just anything, but uh he does a tremendous job in that movie where he plays a character that is just menacing. I remember seeing that movie when it first came out on VHS and I was actually scared. I remember there were scenes where I was like watching it like this. But when did that movie come out? Like the early '90s. I was like 10 or 11 or something like that when that first came out. So I was actually scared watching that movie. And I'd heard about it before I saw it about the whole idea that Candyman shows up when you say his name in the mirror 5 times, and I was scared enough of like I've never been one of those people that believes in the supernatural, but I know enough not to mess with it either. I'm kind of like in the middle where I'm not superstitious, but I'm not going to tempt the fates either. If you want to dare me to go into like a haunted house or something like that, I'm not going to do it. If I found out that someone was murdered in the house or something like that, I just leave it at that, and I'm good to go. Okay, I don't need to uh, tempt any ghost or whatever if they do exist. You know what I'm saying? So that's just been my philosophy on that. But yeah, I wasn't gonna say Candyman's name in the mirror either. But I enjoyed that movie, and really, what's funny about that movie, there really is only one violent scene in the movie, and even that's been cut down. Like if you see you have to like see the unedited version to see it better, where Candyman kills the psychiatrist. He like cuts him open, but that's that's really the only scene. But if you watch the movie, you have this feeling of dread throughout the movie, and I wish more horror films were like that, where they have so much good suspense and build up that is able to hold your attention, but also scare you when the good stuff does happen. That doesn't You don't really have movies like that anymore. But Candyman's one of my favorite, and Blade runs that line where it's not really scary, but it deals with a lot of horror movie tropes. It's more of an action movie. A lot of people will say that will count it more just as a superhero movie because Blade is a Marvel Comics character, but it is really that movie started off the superhero craze, if you want to be honest about it. But uh, I still always consider Blade more of a horror slash action movie. And if you look at the metaphor of that movie and the symbolism in that movie, it's a black love story as well. It's definitely a movie that is pro black love, in my opinion. A lot of people don't see that. I've been promising for the longest time to do a breakdown of that movie. It'll take some time because I want to get the actual video. What I mean is like actual have video in my breakdown because I don't want to just do stills or just me talking. But if you watch Blade, uh, he is he's considered a monster, or he's the day walker, but he's looked at as a monster by most people out there. There's even a scene in there where they try to um, they even tell him that he's considered he's getting shot at by police just like the bad guys are. In fact, everyone thinks he is the bad guy because the vampires are in positions of power. So you have a black man who's viewed as a monster, and he winds up saving a black woman, but then by the end, she winds up saving and redeeming him as well by coming up with a cure for his vampire thirst, and even a point where she actually gives her blood to save him, so that he can save both of them by the end. So it's one of those films that is not it's not overt, but if you actually watch the movie and look at the symbolism of what's being put in that movie, is very pro black love, and I appreciate a movie like that where you can make an action movie, but it has an overall message in it that is something that I very much support. So So Blade is just one of those great movies. Now, I like the Blade sequel, but to me, the Blade sequel does not have the same. It doesn't have that same feeling as the first Blade movie did. I thought the first Blade movie was better, well done, and I thought the symbolism in that movie was better too. Now, the second movie, it does have some symbolism as far as uh, like if you think about the meth epidemic, like that's kind of where it's trying to go with it, but it doesn't come off as well as in like the symbolism that's in the first Blade movie. But someone says they like the comics more. It depends on what era of Blade you're talking about, Dark Void. I've seen there's some really terrible Blade comics out there. There's some good ones and there's some bad ones because he's not one of those characters that they really pay much attention to. Even when Blade started, uh, the original Blade was not half vampire. He was just a black dude with some green goggles and a stick. He had a wooden. He didn't have a sword. He had a wooden stick that he would kill vampires with. That's how the character started out. But they changed him over the years to where he became a half man, half vampire. And what I really like about the movie is another thing that they're trying to put into you there is that the fact that uh, he's a character who they say it even in the trailer that he has all their strengths but none of their weaknesses, and the white vampires want to be like him. They say that's their whole goal, but they can't because they can't come out in the sunlight. There's a lot of deep meaning in that. They want that melanin so that they can survive as well. But there's also the whole thing with his mom where uh, she start. If you look at her at the beginning of the film, they show her Sana Lathan plays his mom, where they show her at the beginning of the film, she has an afro. She's in her natural self, but once she gets bitten by a Deacon Frost and becomes a vampire, they show her later on in the movie. She's got the big old wig on her head, and she's a whore essentially. And Blade winds up having to kill her because she was like coming on to him, like she wanted to have sex with him. Now she wasn't acting like a mother anymore. And he told her, "I have to release you," and he winds up killing her. There's symbolism in that as well, but like I said, I'll get more into that when I actually do my breakdown. But yeah, those are my favorite black horror movies and my favorite black horror characters. So, uh, saying that, uh, I've done several black horror themed animations in my lifetime, and the contest question is going to be this. I made a horror film and it's on this channel, so you can go watch it. It's called The Mask and the Monster. It came out back in 2005. Okay. And in that film, these two cops, they go into an apartment building and they wind up fighting some zombies. But in the midst of that fight, the female cop is killed. And she doesn't make it, but that spurs the male cop to go get revenge, and he gets revenge in a very original way, in my opinion. You have to go watch it to see. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen it. But he pays respects to this woman at the end of the animation, and her name is on the gravestone. So that is the question for you guys. What is that female cop's name? She's a sergeant, but what is her name on that gravestone? So if you tell me, you have to watch the animation to tell me, of course. It's called The Mask and the Monster. But the contest question is, what is the woman's name on the gravestone? Put that in the comment section of this live stream. And if you win, I will contact you and get your address, and I will send you a copy of Big Monty and the Cyborg Substitute. You can keep it yourself. I'm going to autograph it and do an original drawing in it. But if you want to keep it, you can keep it, or you can give it to someone that you love and you want them to have this as a gift. Okay? But it probably will be a collector's item because, like I said, I'm going to sign it and do an original drawing in this book. So just letting you know, guys. So that is the contest question. Once again, there's a movie I did called The Mask and the Monster. And at the female cop is killed at the beginning, but you see her gravestone at the end. What is her name on the gravestone? So all you gotta really do is just go watch it, and you can just write down what her name is. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this live stream of Black Horror. I'm probably going to. I can't do it today because I have to work, but tomorrow I might do like a little horror marathon where I watch some more horror movies. Please check out the horror movies that I've done on this channel. There's, I think, like 5 or 6 at this point. Let me look at my little video thing here. Yes, there's the Zombie Takeover. There's the New Jersey Devil. There's Nightmare Room. There's the Mask and the Monster. And there's Side Beast 0008. And then you have Amut's Angel. So those are all the horror movies. I'm going to put them all into a playlist. That way you guys can go watch them all back to back and kind of see them as my art and my skills developed over the years. But I'm a big horror fan. Always have been, always will be. What made me a horror fan was actually the Michael Jackson Thriller video. I saw it when it premiered on MTV with my family, and it scared me, but I loved it as well. So it became one of my favorite videos to watch. Every time it came on, like, it was creepy to me, but I would always want to watch it. And I thought the makeup effects in that movie were amazingly done. So it's still one of those things, like, even when I draw some of my zombies, I like to kind of use that, the way that those zombies were designed with like the rotting flesh or whatever. I still like to design zombies that way. So you guys, that was my introduction to horror, and it was through a black man, through Michael Jackson. Appreciate you, brother, for doing that. That's very different for any artist to do, considering he was a mainstream artist like that. To do a horror film for his video was pretty amazing, and it still stands the test of time today. You can watch Thriller today, and it's still just as good as it was when it was released in the 80s. So you guys can go check that out on YouTube today. I would recommend it if you're in a good mood for it. But thank you guys, as always. I appreciate you. Once again, if you want to get the prize, go answer the question on this in this comment section, and I will contact you when you win, or if you win, and send you that book. I appreciate you guys as always, and thank you so much for showing up. Someone says, "Are you going to talk about Tales from the Hood?" I did talk about it. I covered it at the beginning. You'll have to watch the whole live stream again. But like I said, the Tales from the Hood is one of my favorite films, period, but also one of my favorite horror films. And the caretaker, played by Clarence Williams III, is one of my favorite characters in horror movies, period. Because he's funny and sinister all at the same time. I just love him as an actor altogether. But you guys let me know how you feel about this discussion, and I will be back next Thursday with another live stream. And I'll let you know what the subject is on Monday of next week. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining me, and you guys take care. Peace out.